Well, hello, everybody. My name is Josh Andrus. I am the executive director at Project Confederation. We've done a lot of work on fair deal initiatives such as the Alberta Pension Plan. So I'm really excited to kind of get back to you guys all with the research that we've done. So I'm just going to get right into it. So thank you for joining us. The objective of today's meeting is to provide some context and background information regarding the potential creation of an Alberta pension plan, answer some frequently asked questions, and encourage everyone to participate in the public consultation process currently ongoing. So we'll just get right into it here. First of all, I wanted to provide a little bit of context on what is the Canada Pension Plan. Now, the Canada Pension Plan is a pay-as-you-go public retirement income system established in 1965. It is entirely funded by the contributions of Canadians, plus investment returns obtained by the independently operated Canada Pension Plan Investment Board. The Canada Pension Plan Act mandates that all Canadians over the age of 18 contribute a portion of their income, which is commonly referred to as a payroll tax, which is at 9.9% currently, to the Canada Pension Plan. I'm just going to give a high-level little overview here, but the primary CPP benefit to pensioners is calculated at 25% of average CPP contributions made by the pensioner from the ages of 18 to 65. The Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, which is the investment board that oversees the operations, is operated at an arm's length from the federal government. And what this means is that Parliament can't effectively direct asset allocation. It can't tell the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board what to do. It was established in 1997 as an independent body. During reforms set in motion following the federal government's determination that the Canada Pension Plan, as it was constituted in 1996, was unsustainable. The 1997 reforms that came in to address this problem saw the contribution rate gradually increase to 9.9% to ensure a retirement income stability for pensioners. Keep in mind, though, that originally when we started the program in 1965, contribution rates were only 3.6%. So over the last 58 years, we've seen that almost triple in order to address some shortfalls within the original Canada Pension Plan. Now, when it comes to the pension plan, Section 94A of the Constitution grants jurisdiction of the pensions to the provinces. Section 94A reads, and I will quote it here: "The Parliament of Canada may make any laws in relation to old age pensions and supplementary benefits, including survivors and disability benefits irrespective of age, but no such law shall affect the operation of any law present or future of a provincial legislature in relation to such a matter," which means that provinces have effectively full control over pensions if they seek to go in that direction, as Quebec has done since 1965. Provinces may opt out of the Canada Pension Plan, but must offer a comparable plan to do so. This is actually in the legislation. In other words, the establishment of any provincial pension plan by any province must have at least the same benefit structure as the CPC when it comes to retirement income. Otherwise, we are legally not allowed to move forward with this plan. This ensures that any province seeking establishment of a provincial pension plan must guarantee that pension income for seniors cannot be less than the income guaranteed by the federal plan. So there's I'm just going to provide a little bit of background. I'm obviously not going to go back all the way to 1965, but we'll just kind of do a brief Coles Notes of the last few years here. In early 2001, an Alberta pension plan was actually one of the recommendations as a part of the Alberta agenda. That was a letter written by prominent Albertans such as future Prime Minister Stephen Harper, future Alberta Treasurer Ted Morton, the director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation at the time, Andy Crook, signed it as well. Reiner Knopp, who has gone on to do a ton of policy work at the Fraser Institute. I'm a big fan of their work. Tom Flanagan as well. He was a advisor to the Conservative Party and the Reform Party during their ascendancy from in the 90s and 2000s. He was a central figure in that, as well as Ken Bosenkool. What they did was they wrote a letter addressed to Premier Klein, which articulates that Alberta should be taking every step possible to protect our economic interests, against the federal government that has a tendency to take more money in taxes than we get in spending. And this applies to a lot of programs, but for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to focus exclusively on pensions. The letter actually points out that an Alberta pension plan could offer the same benefits at a lower cost, and concludes that if Quebec can do it, why can't Alberta? So it's actually kind of interesting, the similarities between the times in early 2000s and in 2019. What you had at the time was a Liberal government that was exceptionally unpopular in Western Canada and was bringing in policies that at the time were perceived to harm the interests of Western Canadians. Fast forward to 2019. Justin Trudeau was reelected to a minority government propped up by the federal NDP Jagmeet Singh. They were very much focused on bringing in policies that were stifling economic activity in Alberta. And in response to rising feelings of Western alienation, and at our insistence, actually, we did write a letter to the Premier, which many of you signed. And Jason Kenney launched the Fair Deal panel. The panel's mandate was to outline steps to define and secure a fair deal for Alberta within Confederation, one that was designed to alleviate a lot of the tension within Confederation and strengthen the fabric of our relationships. The panel submitted its final report to the Alberta government in 2020. But in that brief time, we actually did a lot of organizing for the Fair Deal panel events. A lot of you guys came and volunteered for us and spoke at the mic and defended a lot of the policies that we were pushing forward. And I just want to thank, if anybody that was doing that was on the call, I just wanted to thank you for that. The panel submitted its final report to the government in May of 2020. I just said that. In the report, the Fair Deal panel recommended that the government, and this is verbatim, this is what it says in the report, develop a comprehensive plan to create an Alberta pension plan and withdraw from the CPP, and provide Albertans an opportunity via referendum to vote for or against the withdrawal from the CPP and the creation of an APP. So we'll touch on this later, but it is important to note that the government has not committed to doing this without a referendum, and we'll get into the details of that as we go. So in 2020, in response to the Fair Deal panel's recommendation, the Alberta government, in this case, the Ministry of Finance, which was headed up by Travis Taves, contracted Morneau Chappelle, which was renamed LifeWorks in 2021, to conduct an analysis of the benefits and risks associated with the establishment of an Alberta pension plan. Morneau Chappelle is one of the most prominent human resources and pension analytics firms in the country. And its name is most commonly associated, and for those of you who have been paying attention for the last 7 years, you probably know the name Bill Morneau, as he was the Liberal finance minister from 2015 to 2020. He served as the firm's executive chairman before coming to office. So when you have a federal finance minister that launched his career off of a pension analytics firm, you would think that at least on the national stage, when it comes to things like pensions, they would have a certain degree of respect within the finance community. And I think that's what we found. LifeWorks analysis includes an actuarial, economic, and legal technical information regarding the establishment and ongoing operation of an Alberta pension plan. It was released, this is all that's happened so far, is that the pension panel, the Alberta Minister of Finance, Nate Horner, has released the LifeWorks report to the public for us to examine, take a look at, understand, kind of try and get our head around the numbers. And they've also formed a consultation panel, which is chaired by Alberta Treasurer Jim Dinning. I probably should have looked this up before I came on. I believe he was the Alberta Treasurer when Ralph Klein was Premier, and I believe he was the one that can take partial credit, at least, for that famous picture of Ralph Klein holding up the paid in full sign. So there's a little bit of, at least within internal Alberta politics, there's a degree of credibility that comes with Dinning. So they've established a panel, and right now there is a consultation process going on. We'll get into that at the end. We'll kind of walk you through the steps, but for now, let's get into what exactly the report said. So LifeWorks designed its report around the provisions that we previously talked about in the Canada Pension Plan Act that'll outline the provincial opt-out process, including, most notably, the method of calculating what assets a province is entitled to upon leaving the CPP. The Canada Pension Plan Act was actually most recently revised by the current federal government under the direction of Bill Morneau in 2019. So again, there's connections there. The formula that was used to calculate the asset transfer from CPP to any provincial pension plan is outlined in Section 113 of the Canada Pension Plan. Section 113 is considered to be a foundational formula in the Canada Pension Plan from a legal standpoint, given that pensions are provincial jurisdiction, not federal jurisdiction. And because of its foundational nature, it has not been amended since the CPP was established in 1965. And I'm just going to quickly, this isn't verbatim. We have shortened these because we can only fit it on one slide. But this is the formula out of the Canada Pension Plan Act. The amount in the case of any province shall be calculated as the amount obtained by adding the total amount of all contributions credited in respect to employment in that province or self-employment earnings of persons resident in that province, the part of the net investment return and all interest credited that is derived from the contributions referred to in paragraph A. So that's the plus. That is all of our contributions plus all owed interest. Then you subtract from the total so obtained through sections A and B, such part of all amounts paid as benefits under this act, and the part of the cost of the administration of this act, being the Canada Pension Plan, that is equal to the proportion of these costs that the total amount of contributions referred to in paragraph A is the total amount of all contributions. Anyway, that is administration costs, management fees. So we have to pay, what we owe in management fees. So that's the formula in the act. LifeWorks, using publicly available data, used Section 113 formula to estimate that the asset transfer from a CPP to an APP would, so again, all of the money that Albertans have contributed, plus what is owed in interest, the portion of the investment returns that we're entitled to, minus the pension benefits paid out to seniors, plus or minus administrative costs, that all amounts to $334 billion. That's the total. It is important to note in coming to this total that our net contributions, so not the aggregate contributions, but the net contributions, how much we've put in, subtract how much we've taken out, has exceeded all other provinces combined since the fund was established in 1965. And we'll get into the details of exactly how that works. Now, one of the issues that's been raised is that sometimes people move out of the province to retire, and that would somewhat impact the calculations. But it's actually an interesting fact that over the last 58 years, a similar number of seniors have moved to Alberta than have left. So that means that the net migration of individuals over the age of 65 has actually been relatively flat, and therefore it really doesn't come into play too much in the calculations here. And that's even actually, so that's one that I've seen a few times. If migration patterns hold, the payouts would be relatively similar to protect the pension income of seniors. The potential Alberta Pension Plan benefit structure, and I just wanted to throw a quote from Travis Taves. Of course, Travis Taves, he was the finance minister that commissioned the LifeWorks report, and he wrote a recent Financial Post commentary that, and I'll quote here, he writes that Alberta's outsized share is a reflection of our outsized economic contribution over the last 60 years. As we have with fiscal transfers, Albertans have massively subsidized the rest of the nation's CPP premium rates by paying a higher premium rate than our own demographics require. And when it comes to assessing benefit structure or even long-term viability, demographics are absolutely key here. Thanks to decades of public policy from successive governments focused on strong economic development, Alberta has long benefited from a younger population than the rest of the country. What this means is that more young people move to Alberta because we do have more high-paying jobs, more readily available high-paying jobs. We typically have a lower unemployment rate if you average it out. I mean, there are booms and busts, but on average, we typically have a lower unemployment rate. And what this does is it creates an environment where pension contributions per capita are significantly higher than the rest of the country. So this means that Alberta, despite being just 16% of the population of the Canada Pension Plan, is responsible for a disproportionately higher share of contributions into CPP each year. Again, it comes to the fact that we make more money on average, so we're contributing more on average. So despite being a smaller percentage, we're still putting more in than our share would otherwise indicate. Similarly, and this is key when it comes to net contributions, we are home to just 10% of the retirees collecting benefits from the CPP. And this discrepancy is something that's been relatively consistent during the entire existence of the Canada Pension Plan. Because we consistently pay more and take out less, we are contributing more than our share every single year. Oh, did I go backwards? No, I said that one there twice. So again, like with migration patterns, you end up in a situation where every single year, 16% of the CPP is contributing more than 16% of the contributions, while our seniors, we only have about 10% of the seniors that are in the CPP. So obviously, there's more money going in, which would lead to some benefits down the road. LifeWorks analysis is based on an Alberta pension plan that maintains a pension benefit structure that is identical to the CPP, in line with the minimum requirements of the CPP, as we talked about earlier. No province can leave without assuring that its beneficiaries or its pensioners are guaranteed at least the same level of income. It must be noted that an option exists for the APP to actually improve benefits, whether that be the death benefit or monthly payment, based on our economic advantages, as we described earlier. But for the purposes of this report, just to be in line with the legislation, LifeWorks calculations are based on maintaining the same level of benefits for all seniors as the Canada Pension Plan does. It is also important to note that LifeWorks report is on the very ultra conservative side, we'll say, and it actually assumes, whether it be incorrectly or not, that Alberta's demographics will eventually be in line with the rest of the country, that eventually our average age will be the same as the standard across the country. Now, take for a fact that over 58 years, that's never happened. We've had the same demographic advantages for 58 years. The benefits we're going to talk about, we're going to walk you through, would actually be greater. So if we stay younger, better for us. If we do age with the rest of the country, that's what the report's calculations are based around. Now, as you can see by table 2 here, which is pulled directly out of the report, the minimum contribution rate or base rate of a potential Alberta pension plan based on the LifeWorks calculations is that Alberta would have a base APP of 5.91%. With the base CPP, and as you can see, that base CPP, it says from the CPP 31 report, that is the most recent actuarial analysis done by the Government of Canada on the feasibility of the Canada Pension Plan. It's an absolutely essential report. I mean, if you want to read it, you can. It's pretty long and boring, but it does get into some really good details here. So what that amounts to is like, if we were to take advantage of our ongoing economic strength, we could potentially see a 3.63% drop in payroll taxes for every if we were to set up an Alberta pension plan and leave the Canada Pension Plan. This is according to LifeWorks estimates. The pay-as-you-grow rates outlined on the table, and you'll see there's one that says 2027 and 2060. Those are defined in the report as data points that do not take into account assets already accumulated or level of pre-funding and are provided as additional information for reference only. So what this means is that this calculation is assuming we don't take any money out of the CPP. Everybody that paid into CPP still collects it. That's what the assumption is. So basically, we would be starting an Alberta pension plan based on this. Like, this is the estimate. Again, this is just for reference only. This is not necessarily a proposal. But as you can see, even starting at zero, there's an advantage. If Alberta were to leave the CPP, the pay-as-you-go rate of CPP would only go from 9.54% to 10.08%, while as our contribution rate for everybody contributing into the plan would be down to 7.86%. I think I did the math last night. That's 2.2% decrease. That's still a pretty substantial amount. And as you can see, the pay-as-you-go rate in 2060, the advantage is slightly smaller. It's 11.87 to 12.01. But again, that's based on demographics, right? Like if we don't get, like if our average population doesn't get older, if young people stop moving here, that's what it would be if we came in line with national standards. So that's another key point here. And then I do want to talk a little bit about asset to expenditure ratio. Now, what the asset to expenditure ratio is, it takes the total amount of money in the fund and it divides it by the amount of expenses of the fund. Now, as we kind of went through just with the basics there, so that is how much money's in there divided by how much is being paid out, whether that be in management fees or in benefits to seniors. Now, when it comes to asset security, you want to have more years worth of savings in your savings account when you retire, because then you can, your retirement is more comfortable, right? Like that's a general concept. So as you can see, the target asset to expenditure ratio, so that's what the Canada Pension Plan is targeting every year. It's like an inflation target, right? Like you want 8.4 years worth of assets in that account at all times. That's the target rate of an Alberta pension plan. It's 8.4. Based on LifeWorks calculations, these numbers have a target asset to expenditure ratio of 28.9. So that is 3.5 times the amount years worth of expenses in the fund. And I'd also like to point out again that the target asset to expenditure ratio is actuarial. Like this was done by federal government actuaries, and it was published in the most recent Canada Pension Plan actuarial report. The reason it says CPP 31 is because it's the 31st one they've done. So that is how that works. Next slide. Oh yeah. So let's talk about political independence, because this has been a hot button issue. I've seen it talked about a lot. To me, this is just, it's a ridiculous assumption, because the investment in independence is absolutely essential when it comes to asset security. The last thing anybody wants is government interference. If the proposed Alberta pension plan that we vote on at the end of the day does not have proper political guardrails, or legal, or even better, well, they would be legal guardrails, if not better than what the Canada Pension Plan has, I'm guaranteeing you that Albertans will vote no. There have to absolutely be guardrails preventing the government from having, as I say here, any part in the decision making around investments, let alone using the fund as if it were a political slush fund. And the CPBIB has an independent mandate, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks. The Chrystia Freeland was trying to, for whatever reason, exert some, we'll say, soft pressure on the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board to invest more assets in Canada. The Canada Pension Plan Investment Board basically said, well, if you want us to invest in Canada, make Canada a better place to invest. And so that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how political independence works and how essential it is to asset security. Political independence is absolutely key here. When it comes to this topic, LifeWorks outlined 4 different management structures that would ensure investment independence. And as you'll see here from the 4, not one of them recommends putting the pension asset into general government revenues and using it as a slush fund. Not one of the recommendations recommends giving the government the ability to effectively tell you what to invest in. All 4 of the recommendations in the report are very clear in terms of their investment independence of the fund. So the first one is, it's not a very popular one among the people I talk to, but bear with me, it's in the report, I have to talk about it. It is to allow for the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board to continue to administer the funds in a separate Alberta-owned account. So what you would do is you would separate the assets out, and then the CPPIB would continue to manage the fund in a separate account. That's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, it saves you some time. The second would be the establishment of an independent Alberta Pension Plan Investment Board with the same legal guardrails against government interference as the CPPIB and a similar mandate. Again, it would be the same structure as the CPPIB. The third is the expansion of an existing service provider, such as the Alberta Pension Services Corporation, APSC, with an updated mandates, systems, staffing, and structure. So you would obviously have to significantly adjust pretty much everything about it, but you would take something that's like a piece of infrastructure that was already there, change the mandate, change its staffing structures, change the systems, and bring in experts. Like, I mean, obviously we're going to need experts on this. So that would be one of the options. And the third is to contract one or more service providers such as Fidelity Investments to manage the assets. And so that's a fourth option. We bring someone in from the outside. So those are four options. It could be a combination of one or the other. Again, these are just recommendations. These are not set in stone. This is not a proposal. This is a report outlining options. I also want to talk a little bit about management costs. The investment management cost being an important factor in determining the long-term security of any pension fund. The more money spent on administrative costs, obviously, the less money that's in the fund. So the less money you have saved for your retirement, right? Straightforward. Shouldn't have to explain it too hard. And obviously, this has a compounding effect on the asset to expenditure ratio over time, right? I mean, that's pretty straightforward. The yearly investment cost of assets under the yearly investment cost of assets under management of an average large pension fund, according to the LifeWorks report, is about 0.5%. That's the standard across industry. Canada Pension Plan costs are approximately 0.87%. So what that is and I've got a little stat from Andrew Coyne. I'll get into that in a second. It is the total amount of money in the fund, like the percentage of how much is being spent on analysts, the board, yada, 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 right? According to National, and this is an interesting stat here as well, I wanted to flag, because Andrew Coyne, he's worked at the Globe and Mail, he's done a lot of policy work for various papers, but he reported in a couple of pieces that the annual cost of administering the Canada Pension Plan has actually increased from 118 million with an M in 2006 to 4.4 billion with a B in 2021, which is a 37-fold increase in 15 years. I don't know about you, but that might be somewhat concerning if you were a Canada Pension Plan advocate talking about asset security when you're spending, 37 times what you were in 2006 on asset management. So that is something to keep an eye on. Okay, so where are we now? Following the release of the report, an engagement panel chaired by former Alberta Treasurer Jim Dinning was established. We talked about that earlier. The panel members include former CPP audit chair Mary C. Ritchie, so someone who knows a thing or two about, how the Canada Pension Plan works. Probably a good person to have in the room, as well as University of Law professor Moin Yaya. Moin was a member of the Fair Deal panel from 2019 to 2020. He is a very articulate person, and I think he's a great panelist to have up there. As you can see, public consultations are currently ongoing, and we'll have more details about this in a minute. I'm just going to flip forward here because I'd like to get into questions as soon as possible. So where are we now? Let's continue. So obviously, when the report released, it was kind of a bomb, the CPPIB is flying the board chair out to meet with the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. The NDP, opposition NDP, is lighting their hair on fire. The Alberta Federation of Labor, thanks to Gillen McGowan, is putting out a nice little opposition report on it. Interesting stuff. But the key thing that we need to focus here on is that in the aftermath of the report's release, an emergency meeting of Canada's finance minister were called to discuss Alberta's potential exit from the Canada Pension Plan. So, immediately, all we've done is release a report. That's it. It's not like we've committed to doing this. All we've done is release a report, and there's an emergency meeting of finance ministers. Kind of makes you think, right? Following the meeting, Chrystia Freeland, who is Canada's super fast, famous finance minister, announced that she had directed the Office of the Chief Actuary, which is, again, the group or the big brain that calculates all the numbers. I don't know how to put it more plainly than that, to provide an estimate of the asset transfer based on a reasonable interpretation of the provisions in the CPP legislation. So now where we're at is, so I mentioned earlier that LifeWorks has calculated the initial asset transfer to be $334 billion. Now, the actuary is going to come back with a number. We don't know what that number is going to be. We don't know how long it's going to take. Let's say the chief actuary comes in and their numbers, we can only give you 16.5% of the fund. because that would be a reasonable interpretation, according to the chief actuary. It's likely at that point that we will be engaged in some kind of a litigation or a legal dispute, we'll say, where Alberta's going to go to the table. This is our number. The federal government's going to come to the table. This is our number. It's going to go to court. It may go to the Supreme Court. We may get a reference. But at the end of the day, we got to figure out what this final number is before we do anything, right? So, oops, I clicked on something here. Oops. Okay. Like I said, once the initial transfer amount is finalized, structural designs regarding the benefit structure and contribution rates will have to be completed and presented to the public. So once we know what the initial asset transfer is, we can, figure out what do we want our target asset to expenditure ratio to be. Do we want it at 8.4 in line with the Canada Pension Plan, or do we want it to be 25? Those are conversations that we still have to have, but we don't know what the initial asset value is going to be. So this is something that we're going to have to go through the legal process and figure it out. It is important to note that, like I said earlier, the government has not yet committed to establishing an Alberta Pension Plan. All that's happened is a release of the report, and a consultation panel has been struck, and we're having emergency meetings, and everybody's, it's like, well, okay, you would calm down a little bit. We're not moving the needle on this. Nothing's happening right now. We're just doing a consultation. That's it. But the government has been clear, absolutely clear, that an Alberta pension plan would not be established without express consent of the public obtained via referendum, and that any referendum will not happen until all the details around the plan and asset transfer are known. So we got to know what we're voting on before we vote on it. I mean, trying to force this thing to a referendum without knowing what we're voting on would be counterproductive, because once we figure out what we're voting on, are we going to vote on it again? No, you got to do this right the first time. You got to have all the information in front of you, and you got to know what you're voting for. You got to know the benefits. You got to know the risks associated with it. So yeah, all that's going on right now is a consultation process. Now, that consultation process includes, number one, a survey. This was the first thing released. I think it was more just to kind of get a feel for what people were thinking. There is a QR code here. You can use your phone to scan it. Also, I'm not sure if someone's going to drop the link in the chats. If not, I will drop the link in the chats afterwards as our first go through. So we're still figuring out some kinks. But so that is the survey. Go fill that out. It'll take 10 minutes. I think it says 10 minutes on the website. I think it took me 2 or 3. It really isn't a time consuming process. Just go fill it in. It's just a bunch of, easy questions. The engagement panel is conducting public surveys and other engagement methods as well. They've got a nice little, and I've really enjoyed taking a look at it. They've got a little workbook for people to work through and submit for feedback. We will likely be holding some town halls to walk people through closer to the deadline. The submission deadline for that is February 28th. So again, we're still in early stages here. We're still collecting feedback, or the government is at least, collecting feedback and figuring out exactly what this is going to look like. You can find the feedback process, and this one I will read the link out because it's pretty easy to remember. www.albertapensionplan.ca/engagement. Easy. You can scroll down there. And to get involved with us, there's a QR code here. I can't remember exactly what it goes to. It's one of these 3 options. But you can subscribe to our email newsletter if not already receiving it. If you want to do that too, you can just go to projectconfederation.ca and click subscribe. You can sign up to volunteer, and we can do either in person or remote. We are looking for volunteers. We did a tour in the fall, and so having some volunteers to help us get people out would be good. We are working on getting a volunteer coordinator going, so that should be off the ground soon. Finally, you can donate to help fund our campaign. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do here. There's a lot of research to be done. There's a lot of information to get out there. So we gotta fund this, and especially we are hoping to do in-person town halls, whether that be to a stop in Calgary, stop in Edmonton, or a broader one. Really depends on where we're at financially. So if you could donate to help us out with that, that would be great.